Okay, Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877 seems like a random 12-year period, but hopefully it makes sense by the end. Um, 1865, that's the end of the Civil War. So after the war's over, this is the period of time where we're putting things back together again, trying to get one united country. And 1877 is 12 years later. It's going to be uh, three presidential cycles that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So now what? What do we do? There are problems that abound. Just because shots have ceased being fired, that doesn't mean that we're all of a sudden going to like each other again and that everything's honky dory. There are still major problems that need to be addressed. The first thing is, what do we do with the millions of slaves that are now freed? Are they going to, automatically know what to do with that freedom? They've known slavery and bondage for their entire lives, and it's going to be a struggle for some of them. Second, what do we do with people, white or black, who are homeless or struggling because of the horrible war? There are first the slaves. Obviously, they had their homes and their meals and everything provided for them. So there are quite a few people that are going to need some assistance there. You also have folks that maybe lost their jobs or maybe lost a limb because of the war, and they can't work like they did before, or maybe their homes or their properties were destroyed because of the battles. And then what do we do about the South? Um, are they magically going to forget about slavery and their mentality and just are we going to hold hands again? Should we punish them? Should we go easy on them? What? So first here we're going to go to Appomattox Courthouse, April 9th, 1865. Lee, Robert E. Lee, the head of the Southern Army, he surrenders to Ulysses S. Grant, who is now the commander of the United States military. And it really kind of bothered Lee because he was known to be very straight laced, very neat and dapper, and Ulysses S. Grant was kind of a drunkard and kind of a slob. So he he resented the fact that he was surrendering to Ulysses S. Grant. But he signs a peace treaty. The conditions: first, rebels must surrender their weapons. They're allowed to keep their horses, but they must surrender their weapons. And Grant agrees to feed the rebel soldiers. Now, why do you think that is? It's it's because of the Anaconda Plan, because of the blockade that the Union had done. They were strangling the South, and it was hard to get supplies to their soldiers, including food. So they were starving, and some accounts have Southern soldiers not eating for days and days prior to Appomattox Courthouse. So that's partially why that was there. Then we have the Lincoln assassination on April 14th, 1865. He's shot by John Wilkes Booth while watching Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Secretary of State William Seward was also attacked in his home, and John Wilkes Booth and his cohorts targeted the Vice President, Andrew Johnson, as well. That brings us to the 10% plan. Lincoln wanted the reunion of North and South to be very quick. He didn't want this to be a long, drawn out process where things had to, be reconciled and the South had to pay for everything. So he started in motion the 10% plan. When 10% of a Southern state's voting population swore allegiance, they could reform their government. Now, to put that in perspective, 10%, we're talking if there were a million people in that state, 900,000 of them could still be seething and not swearing allegiance to the United States of America. But if 100,000, if they did, they could start getting things back going again, and under the 10% plan. But every state had to declare an end to slavery. Confederate leaders and top military officials were not pardoned under the 10% plan. They would be brought to justice. Now, what about Robert E. Lee? After Appomattox Courthouse, General Robert E. Lee, he retired from the military, and then he went on to be the president of Washington College in Virginia.